Welcome to the Self-Wealth Real Estate Podcast with your host, Luke Boyer. Today, we have a friend of mine, Russel Hunt. He's an investor in the Ottawa area, and he's going to tell us how he started investing in real estate and how he's partnered with people to build up a portfolio of duplex conversion projects and how he's been able to leave his job from investing in real estate, but also how his engineering background has helped him be a better real estate investor. He's also going to get into what he's doing next as duplex conversions are becoming a little more difficult to keep them profitable, what he's doing next and what he's transitioning into to keep succeeding in real estate. Join us for the show. Welcome to the Self-Wealth Real Estate Podcast. Today, we have my friend Russel Hunt. Russ is an investor in the Ottawa area. Welcome to the podcast, Russ.
Hi, Luke. Thanks for having me. It's an honor. Appreciate being on here, and just to be named in the same sentence is always a good day, as Luke Boyer.
Thank you, Russ. So, welcome. We're actually recording both of us in my house today for internet reasons, but in different rooms. So it's good to actually see you in person. And tell our listeners a little bit about your background before real estate.
Yeah, so I grew up on a small farm, about a half hour outside of Shawville in the Pontiac area. Grew up with blue-collar parents. My mom worked at the local newspaper. My dad farmed and landscaped. Hardworking upbringing. I lived out in the country. My closest neighbor was like 5 kilometers away, so very off the grid. So grew up there. Then after high school, I took a year off to save up for college. And then I went to college at Algonquin College in Ottawa. Did 3 years there. When I graduated in 2008, couldn't really get a job I took electrical technology. So I was trying to either get on with an electrician company or trying to get on just under electrical design. No one was really hiring. So a friend of mine said, well, hey, let's go to Lakehead and do our engineering degree. So we packed up, went up to Thunder Bay, did 2 years up there, got my engineering degree. And then that was in 2011. And then I got hired on at an engineering firm in Ottawa. And I worked there for a couple of years, transferred to their Kingston office, spent a few years there, moved back to Ottawa. So I was at the engineering firm for 12 years. When I was in Kingston was when I bought my first property. It was an up-down duplex that I lived in the basement and fixed up. I basically a house hack and rented up the upstairs. And I still own that today. But then I moved back to Ottawa, purchased a house with my now wife, and we started purchasing some rental properties, and I can get into that after. But and then I've invested with my brother, some joint venture partners, and the latest news is last month I left my corporate job, no more engineering, and I'm doing real estate full time. And I'm interviewing with brokerages because I'm also going to be a realtor on the side as well. So wow. That's the latest news. I just told you that the other day.
I know. Congrats. That's big news. It's a big deal to leave, a prestigious job like an engineer to go full time into real estate. Clearly you've been successful. Tell me about that first deal in Kingston. What did you pay for it?
Paid $232.
It was already a legal duplex.
No, it was just separate entrance. It's a semi-detached. And the previous owner had kind of roughly already had it laid out with a 2-bedroom in the basement, rear entrance through the furnace room, and then front entrance where you walk up. But then when you enter the front, there's 4 steps down, and that's where a shared laundry is, and then 4 steps up. So we had already kind of had it set up. So I ended up the basement was just a really rough shape apartment, but it's something I wanted to always do. I first kind of and I'll kind of back up a bit. When I was in engineering, I met a couple like-minded people, Alex Powell being one, a good friend of mine in the Hamilton area who's killing it. And we always talked about real estate, getting into real estate. My brother was a big influence as well. He always talked about getting into real estate. So I wanted to buy a rental property. And I thought the easiest way, and I still think it's one of the easiest way if you're trying to get into it, is the house hack method is buy one. I only had to put 5% down. So on 232, I didn't have to come up with much money, closing costs. And then I just had to endure having tenants above me and kind of pick away at I put in new flooring, I put in new kitchen, just did kind of small things to spruce it up. And then whenever I was ready to move back to Ottawa, it was an extremely good cash flowing property, even at 5% down. The rates were nice and low then too. And
When was it that you bought it?
Say that again?
What year did you buy it?
I bought it 9 years ago, so January 2014. Yeah, early 2014.
So okay, so you paid 230.
232.
232.
Yeah.
But 5% down. So you're, with closing costs, you're about a whole $15,000 into this place.
Chump change. Not for a first year engineer, but still, it's not much to save for that.
Yeah. It's not easy to buy at those numbers anymore either. But
no.
So what do you think that place is worth today?
Well, I actually had it refinanced 2 years ago, and it appraised at 460. And I literally have I took down popcorn ceiling between now and then. I've replaced some flooring on the upstairs unit, and then just had tenant turnover. Funny story actually about that one. Just had a tenant turnover on the upper unit in May, and it's renting for $2,400 now. And the original, when I first bought it, it was renting for $1,200. So it's doubled in rent in 9 years, and
doubled in value.
And I've done very minimal. I put a new AC in. Yeah, it's a little bit of a cost, but honestly, it's been a good one for a first one.
So what's your total? What's the total rent? 2,400 upstairs, and what are you getting downstairs?
So I have the same tenant down there for like 7 years, so it's definitely under rented. She's kind of my eyes and ears though, so I do not mind it at all. It's doing well, and she pays $1,010 now, so I still increase every year. But yeah, it's
so you get $3,400 a month on a place you paid $232 for.
Correct. Yeah,
that's pretty good. Pretty good numbers.
Very, very good numbers. Kingston is hot too. I wish I bought more when I was there.
Kingston's done well as a market for sure. Yeah. And I like that the semi-detached bungalow. It sounds like with the steps up and down that's kind of a raised bungalow, which is ideal. And
the basement bedrooms have high windows. It's appealing. She's already told me she's probably going to be leaving next year. Her boyfriend moved in like a year ago, and they're saving for a house. So on turnover, there won't be much to do. She keeps in good shape, but I should be able to get around $1,800 now for that basement, maybe $1,700 to $1,800. So it'll just jump up another.
In a lot of markets, the semis are about $100,000. I'm talking like a bungalow. In a market that's $400 to $600 for the bungalow, might be $300 to $500 for the semi-detached bungalow. And yet you often have a similar amount of square footage. So I have one, I believe I've told you about this one, near Algonquin College in Ottawa. And it's a semi-detached bungalow. It's about 1,200 square feet. And I have 4 bedrooms up and 4 bedrooms down as a legal duplex, 2 bathrooms in each unit, ensuite laundry in each unit, hydronic heating with the on-demand hot water system. So it's 8 legal bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, rented in a student area. So it rents well.
Yeah, and you can pick them up. That's with the semis. You can pick them up a lot cheaper, like you said. And like when you're doing your conversion, your biggest challenge is, I guess, your windows. I'm assuming it was because you have one wall where you can't. But other than that, like, it's appealing. There's large square footage. So yeah, it's
and it's fun because the existing staircase was on the shared wall. We had to move the staircase, but I didn't want to lose where we would end up with specifically because it was an area with students. I could have easily done, kind of basically taken a corner of the living room or the dining room, cut a hole through the outside wall and done a staircase straight down and just do a wall enclosing the living room, the staircase to the living room, and done a nice simple entrance like that to save money. Instead, I spent about $25,000 digging an outside entrance because I would have lost one, basically to fit it in. I wouldn't have been able to fit 4 bedrooms in both units. Had I done that, I would have had 3 and 3. And the difference in a student rental area, again, they're rented as a group. I don't rent individually, but it's a big difference because people do value it by the room. And so getting 4 and 4, it was worth that extra 25 grand for the outside entrance.
Absolutely. So actually, speaking of Algonquin College, that kind of ties into my next property I bought when I moved back to Ottawa. I purchased just a bungalow with my wife. We lived there for 6 years, and when we moved, it's the same thing. We analyzed kind of, hey, this is close to Algonquin. This might be worth an up-down, but the staircase is like right in the center of the building. I would have to do exterior stairway in, like a new stairway in. So right now we're like, okay, this might be something we'll do down the road, but I mean, we're renting for $3,200. It's a 4-bedroom house. It's very appealing to like a group of maybe older students. So they have a lot more space. They have a rec room in the basement. So yeah, it's kind of in a long-term plan. We already have the design done to have an up-down, but we're like, we'll put that on pause until we have maybe a turnover, because it's doing very well right now. So,
well, and that ties to something we can talk to the audience a little bit about, like my philosophy on what I do with these. I have another one around the corner from that one in Algonquin that I have at Algonquin, also a semi-detached. However, the basement was already finished with a full bathroom, with a kitchenette, has a kind of side entrance that goes up or down, and a front entrance to the main unit. So it would lend itself to doing a legal duplex. But, City of Ottawa rules, we basically have to gut everything in an already finished basement with 2 bedrooms. It's not necessarily an apartment down there, but it's a fully functional finished space. We'd have to gut it to the outside walls, re-insulate, everything would have to be new, make sure it meets fire rating, etc. And the cost of that keeps going up. Like, it's so expensive to do a legal duplex right nowadays. And if I had an unfinished basement or a really rough one that I had to spend money on anyways, I would do that. But in this case, the basement was already good. So this one has 3 bedrooms upstairs, already had 2 bedrooms in the basement, already had a full bathroom on each floor. So instead of gutting it, I got a good deal on the purchase. I rented it out to a group of students. We were getting about 3 grand for it. I think I'm getting somewhere in that range now. So it's a group of 5 students or 5 friends on one lease. So it's legal. It's one unit, but they have the whole home to themselves. And I could go, okay, well, I can spend 150 to 250,000, maybe more than 180 to 200 to do a legal duplex on that house, most likely, including adding the laundry and upstairs and a few things like that. But I would go from 33,000 in rent to maybe a little over 4,000 in rent total, maybe 4,500 at most. And I didn't think spending that much more, the incremental amount of spend on that house, was worth the incremental rent in this case.
Exactly. That's kind of, we did the analysis on both, and it's like, look, it's not, right now, it's not worth doing it. I mean, the amount of money we're putting in, like you said, we're like, look, just keep it as a full house, and you have less people overall in the building. And just doing the cost analysis on it, on what way's better. And that's what we decided to, is just keep it as a single family home right now. And it's killing it still too. So
have you looked at doing a coach house?
That property, yeah. Well, I haven't looked into the physical permitting on that property, but it is definitely, like, speaking with my wife, that out of all the properties we own, that's probably one of the best set up. It's got a nice gradual flat back. It's got a big opening in the back.
Good parking?
Good parking. Yeah, you can do side-by-side parking already. So yeah, it's definitely down. It's in the works eventually, but for right now we're kind of letting it ride.
Yeah, for sure. So, the coach houses too it's hard to know what you're going to be able to, I love them, but it's also hard to know what you're going to be able to finance on them on the exit, because it's very difficult to value them. A lot of appraisers, there's just very few comparables for them right now. And so if you're relying on an appraisal to be able to pull out the refinance, that's a difficult situation. But if you're sitting on cash and not sure what to do, in terms of, I don't want to buy something else, everything's so overvalued, then building a coach house right now is a really good way to put your money to work. You're going to get a good return on that, even if you may not be able to refinance everything out like a BRRRR.
Yeah.
But let's keep going back to your story. So you come back from Kingston and you start buying. Yeah. And at what point do you start buying with other people? So
after I'd bought that bungalow with my wife, my brother saw what I was doing, because he was also an influence growing up of real estate, but he had never pulled the trigger. So we talked and we said, let's partner up. So we partnered up and we bought a triplex and a duplex in the Renfrew area. Smaller tertiary markets, but the prices are so cheap. The rents were good. They were cash flowing. They were turnkey at that point, because at that point I didn't really know much else than turnkey. rental properties. So we bought those kind of back-to-back years. Still have them today, still doing great. And then at that point, I felt like that's when I joined Oreo. It's like an auto real estate investment organization. That's when I joined Rain Real Estate Investment Network, just to try to explode, I'll say, because I wanted to educate myself more on it, and I loved the rental game. So at that time, I finally convinced my wife, and that's when I learned about the BRRRR of doing like an up-down SDU. So I finally convinced my wife to partner with me for a rental property, and we purchased our first legal SDU construction project near Pinecrest area in Ottawa. And so for that one, we picked it up for $391, which was pretty good price, but the basement needed to be gutted, and I wanted to do it, full legal permits, full up-down, and then do the refinance at the end, try to pull out everything we did, the same old story. So, but on that one, I said to my wife, I'm like, look, I want to do some of the work. I want to, I'll do all the demo. I'll save us money here. I'll save us money there. And I still generaled it, and I was really glad I did general contract it. But yeah, I was there sometimes till midnight, pulling down drywall, filling up the bins, getting friends to come over and help me. And it went well. There was some swearing matches between myself at night of why am I here? Why am I doing this? But in the end, turned out to be a beautiful 3 up, 3 down, 1 bedroom on the up, 2 bathroom on the down. We squeezed in 2 bathrooms and 3 bedrooms in the basement. And it was renting 2,000 up, 2,000 down. We didn't have to do too much on the upper level. So we ended up spending around 115, I think. This was back in 2008 or 2018. So it turned out good, turned out great. It refied at 600. So we were able to pull out just about everything we put in. I think we only had about 15,000 left in the deal. For our first one, I was pretty proud of it. I was happy about it. My wife was really happy about it. We had like an open house where I invited like people I knew, investment network, people I knew from Rain and Oreo. And so yeah, I was trying to build my brand up. And at that time I was like, let's do another one, but I don't want to lift a hammer, and I want to just be way more hands off. I still don't mind being the general contractor on that to save that amount of money. So at that time I had partnered up with, I guess you say first outside of family joint venture partner. And we picked up 2 bungalows actually back to back. We intended on only doing one. We're like, let's just do one, try out this partnership. So we found one on market in Bell's Corners for $375. This is in 2019. And then at the same time, I'm literally at a party just at a friend's house up in the Shawville area, and I was talking real estate because that's what you got to do. And it always comes up in topic, right? So we're just talking about what I'm doing. I'm like, hey, what are you doing these days? He's asking me what I'm doing. I'm like, yeah, look, I'm actually trying to buy bungalows in Ottawa and do conversion. He's like, well, my dad passed away a couple of years ago. His house has been empty for a year and a half. It's about 10 minutes from Algonquin College. The heat was turned off. The pipes burst. He's like, there's holes in the ceiling. I'm like, perfect. I'll come over. Let me come over and take a look. So we met up shortly after, and all this time we had an accepted offer on this other Bell's Corners one. So, but he can't pass up opportunity. So I went there and looked at it with my friend from high school, and he was like, look, I want to get rid of this. Like, I don't even want to list it because it's too good. The basement had a 1/2 inch of water still standing in it. The walls were black. The funniest part was when I'm like, okay, I want to pop my head in the attic. And he's like, I'm pretty sure there's raccoons up in the attic. And because there's like a big hole on the side of the fascia. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll just want to see like if the rafters are in good shape. So I pop my ladder up, I poke open the access hole, I look around, turn to the left, I have my flashlight, and there's a big mother raccoon looking at me like 6 feet away. So came down from the ladder and I said, this one's perfect. Let's do it. So I got it for $325, and at the time houses bungalows were going for $450 and higher. So then I went back to my JV partner. I said, look, man, we can't pass up this. We're getting it for really good. It's perfect setup, had a rear entrance, steps down, a front entrance, and it was just ready for the gut. So then we did them both in tandem. And what was nice is they were only 7 minutes apart. So I was able to piggyback the contractors off because we were doing them at the same time. So my plumber would go to the one, then he would go to the other one. My drywaller would go to the one, then go to the other one. So it really helped out with that. And that one was even better. We paid about 160 in construction on both of them, 160 between 160 and 165. The other one needed a complete gut. It was smoked in for 40 years, same owners. But in the end, they were both just parallel to one another. They both refied for 700. They both had similar construction costs. And they were both what they call unicorn deals, I guess, because we were able to pull out every bit of my JV partner's money that he put in. And we were also able to put out every bit of the construction. And we still split about 20 to 25K between the two of us. So I was the active investor. He was the passive investor. He just fronted the money, got the mortgages. And now we're just 50-50 owners, and we're splitting the cash flow. And yeah, I mean, the gravy days, like I was going to get into this story after I was calling that probably my best deals to date. Yeah. And they were, at the time, they were cash flowing over 1,200 each after we finished, but we kept them in variable. So they've turned from the best deals ever to one of our worst performing. They're still performing, but our mortgage went from 2,200 to 3,600 over the last year and a half. Still cash flowing because we've luckily had tenant turnover. So we're renting the units now for close to 2,500 each when we started at around 2,000. So we've been able to bump them up, but we've had a few meetings on what are we going to do, ride the storm out, or do we try to get out of this variable? But anyways, it kind of went from the best deal ever to now we're just kind of letting it, the equity build. They're still worth way over 700 what they refied for, like these SDUs, and they're done nice. They're worth like 900 plus. So yeah, long-winded answer.
That's one of the things too, when you do these BRRRRs, is a lot of the times, it's one thing to look at what it should be worth on the market and go, oh, I'm going to get a full BRRRR, or I'm going to get this much out. And the reality is most of the time appraisers are going to come back lower than what it's actually worth on the market because they're conservative. They're essentially representing the bank in that case, or doing it for the bank as their client. And so they're trying to be conservative. And so typically your value is actually higher than what your refinance value is, or your market value is. So there's even more equity there. And if you're able to do a full BRRRR with taking that into account, that's a very good deal. I mean, for me, in my personal opinion, is if you're able to do close to a full BRRRR and break even afterwards, and this isn't before the variable, but right now, if you're breaking even, I still think that's a good deal. I think long-term, that means you get essentially all of your money back out. You're nothing in it except for your financing ability and your time setting up the deal. You have your mortgage pay down every month.
Yep.
And it's the tenants paying you down. You have potential for rent increases in the future. And over time, this property is going to be paid off. So if the property changes, it's 700 now, and 25 years from now, your mortgage is paid off and it's still worth 700, you just essentially got the property for free. And yes, it took 25 years, but you got it for free.
Created money out of thin air.
Yeah. And at that point, like that's retirement, that's cash flow, that's cash flow for your future years, for your later years. I mean, obviously 25 years from now, there may be a few more repairs and stuff to do, but there's only going to be a lot of equity in it to do that with. And so I think the reality of doing a full BRRRR and getting a ton of cash flow is unlikely nowadays. Not that it would never happen, but it's very unlikely. But still, having a property that breaks even from a cash flow perspective, but you get all the other advantages of real estate, I think is
100%.
It's still a great opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. So we completed these right when COVID, like we were finishing up in March of 2020. And at the time I was very hands off. I was home every night for dinner. It was not like I wasn't on site all the time. The contractor was taking care of everything. And I said to my wife, I'm like, I want to do this. Like, let's start pumping these out like crazy. I've got one money investor. I can find others. COVID hit. Things changed. So things kind of went on the slowdown after that. But yeah, we got everything done by and rented, and luckily it wasn't impacted by any of the shutdown stuff for the contractor slowdown. But So yeah, my plans in December of 2019 to like pick up a bunch of these in 2020 kind of shifted, and then the prices went through the roof, and now interest rates. So yeah, there's been a lot of shifting in the last, everyone knows, but a lot of shifting in real estate over the last few years. So
What, so you said it was electrical engineer?
yes, yeah.
Do you find that that's helped you in terms of GCing the project?
Yes, 100%. Like part of my job was, analyzing plans, going to sites, reviewing installations. And you're always there with from work, I was always there with like a guy from mechanical who was there reviewing plumbing or reviewing HVAC. So you get that experience, you get that exposure of seeing architectural plans. Like you're talking with an architect all the time about, spatial requirements and light requirements and all this other stuff. So it definitely rubbed off and helped me achieve doing these BRRRRs. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
I think as being the active partner, I think it's very useful to have some sort of, I call them your superpower. You need to have some sort of superpower if you're going to be the active partner and have someone investing with you. And whether that's understanding of construction management or, better knowledge on how to finance things, or just willing to be hands-on, whatever it takes, whatever it is, you have to have some sort of advantage that allows you to do this better than somebody else. And I think one of yours, amongst many, is your ability to understand the construction side of it and manage it. And I think that's very important for an active partner to be able to do. Someone else could say, well, I'm just going to hire, a full GC company. And I would question sometimes what value they add as an active partner, unless they have a different superpower. It's not like it's the only one that exists is construction ability or construction knowledge. So that doesn't have to be it, but you have to have some sort of reason why you should be the partner versus the person doing it themselves or going with somebody else who has
It's a puzzle, and you got to each bring in that puzzle piece to fit. And you bring up a good point, because I have some good friends who kind of do what I do, and they're investing in real estate, and they're like, we should always partner. But we've even had discussions where we know that we both bring the same thing to the table. We probably wouldn't work great together. As great as he or she is, that I know, like I'm bringing a certain thing, and we kind of bring those both qualities. So not like it wouldn't succeed, but I just feel, and we both felt as we had these discussions, is, you know what, we're not quite ready maybe to do that, because we're both bringing the same things to the table. Because you always need, those parts. You need the financing, you need the active, the brains, the design. So yeah, you bring up a good point on that. You each have to bring in that superpower to make the partnerships and the joint ventures work.
Yeah, and I have seen joint ventures where, for example, two active partners will split their share. So a typical for the listeners, a typical joint venture is what you see often in Ontario is a 50-50 split where somebody brings all of the capital and the financing ability, but they're otherwise a silent partner. And then the other person finds the project, manages the renovation, basically sets everything up, and they do all of the active work. And then they'll split that deal 50-50. But I also do see sometimes where, let's say, two active partners who have different value adds, they'll come together to provide more value, and they'll split their 50%. And then there'll be another 50% partner, or two people who bring the money together, and then they share in that 50%.
Skin the cat a million ways. There's so many different ways you can do it. So, but yeah, that's how we did it, and they were successful. So,
what's next? Are you still looking to do more?
Well, so after that, I took a step back from the duplex conversions, but I was still actively looking. And I still did mail outs. I still did some door knocking. I still did quite a bit to try to find properties. And I did my first flip in Canada area on a mail out. Also kind of a funny story. So it was one of my first mail outs, actually. I did kind of all of Canada area. And this guy calls me, and I've got a few callbacks, but this guy I met with, but he originally calls me and he says, look, I have tenants in here. They're driving me crazy. I own my house outright, but I can't get my tenants out. They're ruining my life. So I went and met them. The house was disgusting, but it was detached bungalow, heart of Canada. Detached two-story, heart of Canada. And my intention was to try to find something to do in up-down SDU when I'd first did my mail out. But when I got there, I knew it was 2-story. It didn't really have the spatial requirements in the basement or even to put in more than a 1-bedroom. So I looked at a different exit strategy of just flipping, and I said, you know what, let's flip this. So I actually partnered up with a different joint venture partner at the time, and we went through the flip process. Went very well because we kind of rode that increase because we purchased it in 2021 and finished it. It took about 6 months renovation. So prices were on the rise. We sold it midsummer 2021. Yeah, in midsummer 2021. So we got a big bump. We paid $370 for it. And we didn't have to do a whole lot. I mean, the kitchen, he had plywood countertops and there was, the basement was hoarding. So it was just basically full clear out, got the kitchen, new flooring everywhere, new painting, get that smoke smell out of there. But then we finished the basement. We did a nice finished basement. Even though it was small, we put a new bathroom down there, put a laundry room, like a nice laundry room in down there with counters, little rec room area, enlarged 2 of the windows, just to make it like a better single family home for someone to buy. And then we had 4 offers or 5 offers on it after we listed, and all at once. And then we kind of did some back and forth, and we sold for $640, and we put in just under 100 or around 100. So it was a really successful one. And
And you paid $340.
$370. Yeah. So we
Very good deal.
yeah, we were happy with it. And it was the first time partnering with this other joint venture partner. And it was the same kind of deal. He fronted the money, got the mortgage, and then we just split the profits when we sold. And he keeps bugging me about when are we doing another one. So
Well, one of the things too, actually, is what you were talking about the 2 stories. Now I think 2 stories there's going to be more of an opportunity for them than to turn them into apartments, because with Bill 23, you can turn them into 3 units. So you could do basement 1 unit, main floor 1 unit, and upstairs 1 unit. Because basically, every city is going to be forced to allow 3 units in the main or 2 in the main and a coach house. And some cities may expand that and allow more of a variety. Hamilton's allowing 4, Toronto's allowing more than 3 as well. And some cities are going to allow different mixes and things like that. But 3 is essentially going to be automatic. So I think the main thing for me when I'm looking at it, the main thing is going to be can I park 3 cars wide or have a way of parking 3 cars without moving? Because I don't like having tenants sharing tandem parking where they have to move another person's car to get their own. So if there's a way that you can park 3 cars, sometimes it's drive along the side of the house and then park 3 and 3 in a line in the back kind of thing. Something like that. If you can do that, then I see that as, okay, that can be a great triplex. You have to build maybe an external staircase, but you can probably use an internal one. Anyways, there's ways to do it now, but I think even though they might be smaller units, like you said, 1 bedrooms, and honestly, a lot of the times, even these 2-bed, like when you look at condo designs, downtown Toronto and things like that, they fit 2 bedrooms into like
a tiny space. Yeah.
So I think it's doable as well to get kind of maybe 2 bedrooms into some of these units as well. So I think there's the big opportunity to turn some of these 2 stories, which us investors typically weren't looking too much as SDUs. Now we can look at these and go, okay, this could actually become, let's say, a triplex in the existing building, which is going to save a large amount of money. I'm actually doing a triplex conversion in Ottawa right now.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. West End? East End?
East End off Cummings.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, from there.
And the reason, actually, Russ, that I'm doing that one is there's a double driveway on one side. Fits 4 cars, like 2 wide, 2 deep, plus a garage, a detached garage. And then it's a corner lot. The other side has a single driveway.
Perfect.
So it's perfect for 3 units. And it wasn't, it was funny because there's 3-meter bases. It was set up as a duplex. It looks like a purpose-built duplex. The city has it registered as a single family. So instead of fighting them on it, they're allowing it. So we're doing a single family to triplex conversion instead of a duplex to triplex conversion. But
yeah, and parking's always one of those pains too. Especially, well, I only mainly do Ottawa, but there's certain requirements you can't do. I don't think you can do tandem in Ottawa, can you?
No, yes, you can.
You can. Okay.
And I think that's actually a requirement. I could be wrong, but these SDUs are not additional parking. You know what? I'm not as worried about whether you can do tandem or not. It's whether I want to. But no, I believe you're allowed to, because sometimes a parking spot works as a parking spot, but the size doesn't need a full legal one, so you can just claim they're going to park in tandem even though they're not.
This is a lessons learned for any of the listeners: is have a good power team around you, and ask your architect or your building official or whoever you're going to deal with for these kinds of questions. Because I don't know all the answers, you don't know all the answers, but that's where we surround ourselves with the educated people.
Exactly. So why don't we move on to the next segment of our show, where we talk about our best and worst deals. Now, I know we've already dug into some deals, but and we can cover one of the same ones, and then we can get into the lessons learned, because I think we learn the most lessons from the deals that go wrong or don't go as well as we would have liked. And also, we learn lessons from the deals that have gone well as well. So let's start with your best deal ever or your favorite deal ever.
Yeah, well, I hate to bring up those two again, but those were definitely my favorite because they were early on in learning this SDU method. Lessons learned on it is like, I vividly remember going through the numbers with my partner saying, look, we're going to get this rate, but I even put in a 5% interest rate, but that will never happen. Like, don't worry, that it won't go that. It'll take forever for them to raise it to 5%, and we're still going to make so much money. Well, no one has a crystal ball. Prices are now, or interest rates are now 7 plus. So I think a big lesson learned there is stress test your deals, making sure you have a big bandwidth there. Also just staying up on like economy trends and staying up on, because if we had, we probably would, like, we had the discussion on, hey, should we lock this in for a few years? Maybe, we saw this first interest rate in March, last March, and we're like, no, they can't go too quick. They can't go too fast. So that was a big lesson learned. Keeping an eye on the trends and then try to work off that.
Yeah, and it's really hard. You don't have a crystal ball. It's really hard to know how things are. And historically, over 90% of the time, you are better off getting a variable than a fixed, because they're typically at lower rates and you don't have the cancellation penalties. So Professor Moshe Milevsky did a study he was at Schulich. He did a study and they found that over 90% of mortgages were better off being variable than fixed. So most of the time you're better off, but there's some situations, obviously there's 10%. That's how odds work. And so, I never worry about playing the odds as long as you're making the right decision with the information you had at the time. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think from your story, one of the lessons I think people can learn is telling everyone what you do. Because you were saying you weren't even in Ottawa, right? You were where?
No, I was in Ottawa when I was doing those updates. I was in Kingston for a while.
When you were telling him the story about.
Oh yeah, I wasn't even in Ottawa. Yeah, I was at just a random party from a hometown, and you just.
How far is that from Ottawa?
Like an hour or so, or 2 hours almost. Yeah. So like you just open up, like, and that's the funny thing. So that first partner that wasn't family came from me talking to a lady at work, and I ended up partnering with her son. That ended up being her son because I started talking about, I'm into real estate and I want to do this, this, and this. And she's like, oh, you should meet up with my son. He used to live in Calgary. He owned a rental property there and he lost some money, but he loves it. And then we ended up meeting up for a beer and he's like, let's do it. And then that's how we got it. The second partner I partnered with the flip was another guy from work. And I used to be so hush-hush at work about it because, you don't want to tell people you're doing a lot outside of work because, you might think your manager is going to be like, well, he's not focusing on work or he's taking calls that aren't work calls, which happened a lot. But still, I was very scared of opening up about my real estate ventures. And then I just did it more and more. And that's where you attract money, you attract investors, you attract a lot that way. It's a good way, not only at work, but just friends, family, networking events. It's getting your name out there and just letting people know what you do and what you've done successfully could be a huge bonus for you. And that's where I'll just continue here. I know we're kind of going off topic here, but I've just actually got a 12 unit under contract in Arnprior, and the way I'm finding this investor was just from a guy I used to know at hockey that I had reached out to, and he's a doctor now, and then his friend who's a doctor wanted to get in real estate, and we've been in touch, and now we're partnering up. So it's just keeping your name or keep talking about real estate is just, you'll get people that see what you're doing and see the successes, and then they want to tag along.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's a lesson for everyone. Don't forget to talk. Let people know what you're doing, because you never know who who might be able to help you or be interested in helping you or introduce you to someone. One of my my biggest lender for a while there he was a friend, but it was actually because a different friend, my best friend, invested or lent money to me when I was growing the business, and I was talking to this other friend and said, "Oh yeah, this friend lent me money," and it kind of he was like, "Oh, he did it? Oh, okay. Well, he's smart. I'll lend you some too." And he ended up, actually investing quite a bit with me over time. I'm paying back most of it now, but it was kind of long-term, high-interest stuff that I could use to roll in and out of properties, and it helped me a lot. And he made a really good return on it. Was happy with it too. So, yeah,
exactly. And once you build credibility too, it's definitely it's a huge thing. And just even credibility from like you said, your friend's friend or your friend and another friend. Well, he trusts him, so he must be making a good investment. So then he wants to jump in too. So,
absolutely,
yeah.
So let's talk about your worst deal or your least favorite deal.
So I'm an overanalyzer. I think it's my engineering background where I don't like jumping into anything where I know I feel I'm not going to be successful or very successful in it. So I can't say that I had a lot of very bad deals. Like the worst deal, like I said, now went from my best deal to my worst deal were those two properties where still working, still doing all the great things of real estate and building equity, still cash flowing a slight amount, but we went variable. So I don't have a great answer for that one because the other ones have gone pretty good. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, we kind of talked about the lessons learned there, but how it can change for sure, and how rates can affect things.
Yes. And I guess one lesson learned too is I regret not continuing to search. Like whenever I landed those two properties, I kind of halted my search. I'm like, oh, I'll focus on these. And, whenever I'm done, I'll start looking for another property. Well, the entire time I was doing that, I should have been looking for another property so that I can start and roll into that next one, because you're missing out on this. And what happened was, I finished it and then I had nothing to do. And I was like, oh, why wasn't I continuing to look, continuing to search, continuing to do a mail out or start doing a mail out earlier, just to try to, get something in the queue that you can always have a longer close too. If like, oh, look, you're too busy on these two, just try to get a longer close. And then whenever that one's done, you can start up the another one. Or once you get your refi money back, you can start up another one. So that was a big, kind of a regret or a lesson learned is just don't stop searching. Because after we did that, I kind of took a pause, and then it took me a year to do another deal. Even after the flip too, like I did the flip and I kind of focused on that. And once again, I didn't really continue looking. And then I was like, okay, we're done. Where do I go from here? Yeah. You always want to keep a little bit of in the pipeline at different spots in the pipeline is the important part, right? Because if you have it all in the same spot of a pipeline, you hit a bottleneck. But if there's different parts of it, none of it's hitting that bottleneck at the same time. Hopefully, it's hard to time though. You can't always control it. It is, yeah. And documenting.
You might say no to some deals because it's the wrong timing, but hopefully you get some stuff in the pipeline, or you're talking to someone with some follow up, and then you finish the deal, you can bring another one in. When that one's ending.
And another lesson learned here, just thought of it too, is just documenting it as you go along, like to create kind of systems, and even for pitches to new investors. Like when I did the first one with my wife, I was like just kind of flew off the cuff and did everything as it came. I should have kind of tracked or kept kind of a log of, okay, after this step, you do this step. After this step, you do this step. And then you can systemize it and become way more efficient. And not only that, then you can kind of show that to another investor, like this is exactly how it's done on a quick high level scale. And then you can bring people in that way, and you'll also maximize your time and your efficiency too on it. So that was another lesson learned, of just document what you do if it's going well.
Right. So before we get to our final questions, I thought we could talk a little bit about this 12 unit you're working on.
Yeah. So it kind of, so once I left work, when you can say I resigned or retired, which I kind of throw both around, but it gave me a lot more time to focus on real estate full time, right? So I was hitting the phones a lot with a lot of a lot of brokers, real estate brokers that deal with a lot of private. So what I've kind of shifted now with these interest rates, like you said, the up down 2-unit in Ottawa, it's not, you're almost not breaking even right now at the price points and at the interest rates. So you've got to find something where either you're going to add 3 units or something larger. So I was looking kind of on the larger scale of, I want to jump into some multi-units. I think the time is right. I'm ready to do it. So I was reaching out to a lot of people who deal with multi-units in private or on the market. And one guy I had reached out to brought me this deal. He said, hey, this one just came up. He tried to sell it to a guy in Toronto area. It fell through. You interested? Because you might want to jump on it because it's some very, very favorable terms, because he's doing an 80% VTB. He was willing to do an 80% VTB at 4%, but he was asking 1.9 million. So we did back and forth. I got him down to 3.5 interest only for 5 years on the VTB, and I brought the price down. I don't want to do too much details on this one just because it's just conditionally sold right now. So things could still fall through the wayside. But at that time, once I kind of secured the deal, or I knew I'd have a secure deal before I reached out to my network. Who's interested in this? I don't want to fund. I want to be the active partner again. The intention is to turn over 11 of the 12, 12 of the 12 units, or 11 of the 12 units, because it's very under rented right now. Built in 1980, a lot of original, but a lot of the capital expenditures are updated, like the roof, the insulation, the boiler systems, the electrical was updated, the plumbing to the street was updated. So a lot of those core items were done, which made it very attractive too for me. And for a lower renovation cost too, because you're not doing those big capital expenditures, or shouldn't have to do them. So I went out to my network. I said, look, we need this amount of money for the down payment. It's going to be about this over the next 5 years. But it's got a very, very high cash flow for the next 5 years because it's interest only on the 80% of the VTB. So even as the rents are crappy right now, it's still cash flowing very well. And as we turn over tenants, it'll just go up and up and up. And hopefully we'll drive that appreciation up over these the renovations. The end goal is to, in 5 years or under, refinance. Hope the building will be valued around the 2.5, 2.6 range. And then my investor can pull out some, if not all of his money. And then we can either move on to another one, or, just watch the cash flow come in and the property appreciate.
Absolutely. And so this is purpose built as a 12 unit?
It was so it's on one, it's 2 6-unit purpose built on one lot. They're kind of perpendicular to one another, but they're all in the same lot. They have 12 parking spots, but they're very nice brick buildings, purpose built, block foundations, raised basements for the lower level apartments. It's 3-story.
I love the purpose built building.
Exactly.
But the smaller purpose built, like the 6, 12, kind of range, they're great because they often they're liquid for multifamily, and they don't have elevators, which is always nice.
Yeah.
They're pretty simple structures to maintain. It's not overly complicated. So I really like that. Now, for the listeners who aren't too familiar with VTBs, they're vendor take-back mortgages or seller finance, seller take-back mortgages. There's different ways to call it. The advantage there is you're not going to a bank to get the loan. So
huge advantage nowadays too, because the mountain of paperwork.
So it is a little bit the holy grail of financing, kind of. Some people just say, oh, there's a VTB, so it's a great deal. Okay, well, it's not a great deal if it's a VTB at 15% for 6 months, and then you have to find something else. It's not going to give you time to do anything. So the way, depending on how it's structured, really matters. In this case, you're getting 3.5% interest for 5 years, and you only have to make the interest payments. So that helps a lot from a cash flow perspective while you're turning over units, because obviously you're putting money into the building as you try to turn over units.
Exactly.
So, you're out less cash in the meantime as you're doing this because of the way you've structured the loan. And so 5 years from now, you're going to have the same loan amount, you have no pay down, but you're out of pocket way less cash. So in this case, since you're raising money from investor or investors, they're not going to need to come up with as much capital to do this deal as they would if you had a traditional loan with the interest and mortgage pay down, plus the interest rate would be higher right now. So you're actually out of pocket, I mean, a significant amount of money, at this price, at these price points.
And it's a win-win too, like, because it's a win-win because the seller, he's going to make around $50,000 a year just in interest on his.
Yeah, instead of the bank making it. And there is actually, there is actually a way. It's a little bit complicated, but there is a way on rental properties like this where you can spread the capital gains over several years, so he's not paying it all at once. Talk to an accountant if you're considering doing this. I had a meeting with an excellent accountant to kind of explain generally how it would work, but I wasn't doing it for myself. It was just so I could understand the concept for sellers. But yes, it doesn't really matter for a house seller because they're using a principal residence exemption. Typically, there's usually no capital gain, so it's not significant enough for it to matter. But in this case, he's likely making a significant amount of money if he's owned it for a while. There's a large capital gain. If he can spread that over several years and not pay all of the taxes in the first year, especially if it ends up being held personally, so it goes into the marginal personal rates, you can actually save a lot of money in taxes that way too. So it can be a really good way of setting it up.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed, things are moving. Analyzed, we're in the due diligence period. Actually, backing up to, we had a different property under contract, a 15 unit, and we got it into the due diligence period. And this is the lessons learned for the listeners here is review every lease, review all the bills, because what happened was they had sent us a pro forma. This was an off-market property that a mortgage real estate broker was brokering the deal for the seller. He had sent us a pro forma that looked great. Like when we ran our numbers, we came to an agreed price, but we kept asking. We said, okay, well, we need to see the leases, we need to see the utility bills. He's like, well, no, I want to get an agreed price on first. I want to know, so I don't have to, keep bothering the tenants for other people to go through or whatever. I didn't know why you want to do that, but so then when we got the utility bills and the leases, we found out there was a huge discrepancy in the utility bills, and the owner either didn't know or didn't advertise, but he was paying the electricity for like 8 of the 15 units. So it ended up being like $15,000 difference in operating costs that he didn't mention. So we went back and forth, and we that deal ended up falling through because we lowered our price, but they wouldn't go to a certain threshold. But it's just a lesson learned of analyze everything that comes to you, because there's those little things that you might not know, like, oh, this, you're paying for the electricity in here, or the gas is not included, you're paying for that. So it will really affect your deal if you're not analyzing everything thoroughly. So yeah, that was a little side story.
No, I think that's great. So let's get into the final questions. First of all, what has changed about your approach to real estate investing with your experience?
Changing with the market, because the market changes as the market changes, and it's changing so quickly now. I've moved from now looking more from the SDUs to like a multi-unit, larger scale. I think there's a lot of money in multi-units. There's a huge housing shortage. Everyone's talking about it. It's on the news. I've kind of evolved from more of the smaller bungalow SDU model to looking to a larger scale multi-unit model.
Nice. Okay. And if you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice you'd have for your younger self?
Buy more. Buy more when you can. But no, honestly, like, that's one piece. But I think a big thing is just work on building your systems. Work on building your team, your systems, because you rely heavily on that. That's how you're going to grow and be more efficient and get things done. It is working on those. And I can't remember, I heard this on a different podcast or something, but you want to build relationships. It's not just about building a network. Everyone says, oh, build a network, but you want to build like relationships. You want to plant these seeds from years ago. Like I planted this seed with this doctor friend of mine 8 years ago when I played hockey with him. And then we reconnected, and he's doing great. And then that's where we've kind of decided to move forward on. So building relationships throughout, keeping in touch, because you never know when one of those seeds are going to come to fruition. So yeah.
No, that's a good point. I mean, it's even, you mentioned Alex Powell earlier and his wife, Kaylee. They're good friends of mine. And we were at an event where Alex introduced me to you years ago and said, hey, this is a really good guy. Well, I trust Alex. And so I said, okay, well, then this is a really good guy. And now I since moved to the Ottawa area, and, and we talk, and showed me one of my coach house projects, and our daughters have done play dates.
Yeah.
So it's funny how, just
So you want to build relationships. It's not just about building a network. So,
all right, last question. What is the most overlooked or the most overhyped investing strategy right now?
it's funny too. This one kind of changes as the market changes. But I think, in my opinion, right now, I think the biggest overlooked is the tertiary markets, like the smaller markets outside of the bigger hubs. Like the Arnprior, this is where this deal's at, the smaller towns that, like, when COVID kind of changed everything, people want to kind of get out of the big city. They want to, have a little bit of a yard, or they want to have a little bit of like less traffic, and if they're working from home. So I think a big overlooked is like the tertiary, the smaller markets that surround, like, within an hour of like a big hub of, well, for me in Ottawa, it'd be anywhere in pick Ottawa and then pick a 1 hour circle around it. But that works for a lot of cities, right? If you're in Hamilton or Toronto. So I think the tertiary market, for me, is the most overlooked. Overhyped. I think flipping, but even though flipping is great, like, you can do flipping great, but I feel like it got overhyped with all the shows on TV and all this, like, oh, you can do it great, and you're going to make money, and it's so flashy and it's sexy and everyone wants to do it. But if you don't do it right, or if you don't have other exit strategies, like, when you go into a flip, you probably look at it from 4 different angles. You look at it like, okay, can this be an SDU? Maybe. Or could this be a flip? Or could this be, a coach house at the back? So I think flipping is a little overhyped. And I'll speak from a friend at work where he bought a little over high. Him and his wife, like, look, we're going to flip this. Like, flipping's great. We know what we're doing. And then prices went on the downfall. They lost their shirt. They had to sell it for pennies on the dollar. And when I was talking to him, like, you have to have exit strategies. You have to have more than one way to look at it. If you start going down the flipping road and then it's like, oh, wow, this isn't going to work, do you just finish it and rent it? Or do you try to do a conversion at that point? So, yeah, I kind of went off topic there, but I think overhyped. And it all depends on the market. Like, whenever the rates go back down, I think something that's overhyped last month will be overlooked this month. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But anyways, that's my personal.
I think there's still room to flip for experienced flippers.
100%.
And do it well, but I agree that it can be a dangerous space to get into if you're not sure what you're doing.
And that's why you want to rely on those experienced people who do the flipping. Like, I think I would tackle another flip, I think, but I think it's more of someone who just goes out there and says, oh, I'm going to flip because I see the show on TV. Awful idea. You want to rely on someone who's done it multiple times, rely on someone who's successful at it, if you're going to pick that strategy, and have exit strategies. So, interrupted you.
I looked at our flips for the past year. And I mean, that's the thing. So I'm okay losing money on a flip. I'd rather lose money on a flip and move on and do another one than turn it into a different one. That partially comes from the volume approach, because if I lose 1 in every 20 or 1 in every 40, if I lose money on one, the other ones more than make up for it many times over. So it's not like I have to turn that one into an STU or an Airbnb or something like that. But if it's your only one, that loss may be significant to you and may be different. But for us, when I look at this is in a falling market, we've just been more conservative. So in a falling market, we're probably averaging, I don't know, 60 grand in profit on our flips, in the 50, 60 range. And we lost on one, and it was $6,000 that we lost. So it's not like, oh, wow, so we make, 60,000 on 20 of them or 50,000 on 20 of them, and then we lose 60,000 on one. No, for the most part, it's not. I mean, I've lost larger amounts on flips, but I've also made larger amounts on flips. And for us, again, it's about buying conservative right now. And if you're looking into a strategy like that, it was definitely getting overhyped at the beginning of 2022. And some people are still trying to get out of those and carrying those and being careful when everyone's looking and doing it at the same time.
And you brought up a good point there too, of like, when you notice things are not going right and you're not going to make money, you get out of it and you cut your losses, you lose a little bit, but then you're going to make up, like, the volume you do, you're going to make money on all the other ones. So cut your losses, get out of it. But yeah, if you're the solo person that, like, this, you put all your money and your heart and soul into this, yeah, where do you go from there? You got to finish it. Hopefully the market turns a bit for you, but yeah, it's tough for a newer beginner for sure.
So Russel Hunt, where can people find out more about you if they're interested in, having a chat with you or kind of potentially partnering with you on something in the future? Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so best would be email or phone number. I don't have my website. I'm working on an eventual website. It's not there yet. And I haven't joined a brokerage yet for doing we never even got, I know we're hours up here, but we never even got into the side thing of being a realtor is too. But that would be my phone number and my email. Do you want me to give that to you now, or would you put so it's russelhunt@hotmail.com. And my number is 613-807-0241. Easiest ways to reach me: email, text, call. Always up for a real estate chat.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Russ.
Appreciate you having me on.